There is a quiet moment, so subtle most men never notice it, when a woman decides whether you are just another passing presence, or someone she could slowly move toward. She will not confess it. She will not make it obvious. Instead, she asks a simple question, one that sounds ordinary but carries a deeper intention, and in that brief exchange, you either reveal awareness or you lose the moment entirely without even realizing it. Because the truth is, women rarely express attraction directly. They measure it, they test it, they feel for it beneath your words and behind your reactions. And this is where most men fail, not because they lack value, but because they misunderstand the language being spoken to them. In this video, you will uncover the hidden psychological signals behind those questions, the two exact moments where her curiosity becomes intentional, and how a single response can shift how she sees you from neutral to someone she feels drawn to. So stay with me until the end, because once you see these patterns clearly, you will never again confuse politeness with interest, and you will begin to recognize the precise moment a woman quietly opens the door, and whether you are the man who knows how to step through it. Before we dive in, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. What appears on the surface as a simple exchange between two people often carries layers of meaning that the untrained eye never detects, and this is especially true in the subtle dynamics between a woman and a man who carries maturity, presence, and life experience. Because unlike direct communication, which relies on explicit words, feminine communication, particularly in moments of emotional interest, leans toward implication, calibration, and emotional sensing. And this is not sleuthy or manipulation, but rather a deeply rooted psychological pattern shaped by both biology and social conditioning, where the woman seeks safety before expression, certainty before exposure, and alignment before emotional investment, which is precisely why her interest does not arrive loudly, but quietly, almost disguised, wrapped inside questions that appear ordinary, yet function as psychological instruments designed to measure something far deeper than their wording suggests. And when a man begins to understand this layer, not intellectually alone, but perceptually, something shifts in how he experiences interactions, because he is no longer reacting to al kalimat themselves, but to the intention behind them. And this awareness alone places him in a rare category of men who do not chase clarity, but recognize it when it subtly presents itself. What makes this even more compelling is that as a man grows older, particularly beyond the age of 50, the entire framework through which women perceive him changes in a nuanced but powerful way, because he is no longer evaluated through the same lens as a younger man who is still forming his identity. Instead, he is perceived as someone who either embodies clarity or has settled into emotional rigidity, and women, whether consciously or not, approach this category of men with a different kind of curiosity, one that is both cautious and intrigued, because the question in her mind is no longer, is he attractive, but rather, is he emotionally alive, and is there space for me within his world? And here lies the first layer of the silent test, where what seems like light conversation begins to carry the weight of evaluation, not in a judgmental sense, but in a deeply human desire to avoid emotional misalignment. Because for a woman, especially one who has experienced life, the cost of investing in the wrong emotional environment is far greater than the discomfort of holding back her interest. You may notice in certain moments that her tone shifts slightly, her questions become more personal, yet remain framed in neutrality, and her attention becomes more focused, not in an obvious way, but in a manner that suggests she is no longer just participating in conversation, but observing, sensing, and quietly interpreting. And this is where many men, despite their experience, respond on autopilot, offering surface-level answers to questions that were never meant to be taken at face value, because that these questions are not requests for information, but invitations to reveal emotional positioning. And the difference between a man who understands this and one who does not is not intelligence, but awareness, a kind of psychological attunement that allows him to sense the underlying purpose of her words without needing them to be explicitly stated. Research in interpersonal attraction and communication patterns has consistently shown that indirect signaling plays a significant role in early-stage romantic dynamics, particularly among individuals who value emotional safety and social perception, and a study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships highlights how subtle verbal cues and indirect inquiries are often used as low-risk strategies to assess compatibility and openness without triggering rejection or vulnerability too early. While findings discussed by the American Psychological Association emphasize that perceived emotional availability and clarity of intent are among the strongest predictors of attraction in mature interpersonal contexts, which aligns precisely with what unfolds in these seemingly simple exchanges, where a question is never just a question, but a doorway through which she senses whether stepping closer would feel natural or misaligned. When she asks whether you spend a lot of time alone, she is not evaluating your lifestyle in the practical sense, but rather scanning for emotional accessibility, trying to understand whether your solitude is a sign of grounded independence or closed-off detachment. And the distinction here is subtle yet profound, because one communicates strength with openness, while the other suggests distance without invitation. And her perception of this difference is not formed by your words alone, but by the tone, the ease, and the underlying energy with which you respond, which is why two men can give similar answers, yet create entirely different impressions, one inviting curiosity, and the other quietly closing the door without intention. And just when the interaction begins to settle into a rhythm that feels comfortable, she introduces a second layer, often framed as a question about what you are looking for these days. And here the dynamic deepens, because now she is no longer assessing whether there is space in your life, but whether there is direction within it, and direction, in the psychological sense, is not about rigid plans or detailed explanations, but about the presence of intention, a sense that you are moving toward something meaningful rather than drifting through time without orientation. Because for a woman, emotional safety is not fucked about how a man makes her feel in the moment, but about whether his neutrony world has enough structure to hold consistency over time. And this is where clarity becomes attractive, not as a performance, but as a reflection of internal alignment. What is particularly fascinating is that these dynamics operate largely beneath conscious awareness for both sides, meaning that she may not even articulate to herself why she feels more at ease with one man over another, yet her nervous system registers signals of openness, steadiness, and intention, responding to them with increased comfort and subtle attraction, while withdrawing from ambiguity and emotional inconsistency without needing a logical explanation. And this is why a man who develops the ability to remain present, composed, and clear in these moments does not need to impress, convince, or pursue, because his way of being already communicates what she is quietly seeking, creating a natural alignment that feels effortless rather than forced. There is also an important ethical and human dimension to this understanding, because recognizing these patterns is not about manipulation or strategic response, but about cultivating a deeper level of awareness that allows for more genuine and respectful connection, where both individuals feel seen without pressure and understood without pretense. And in this sense, the goal is not to pass a test, but to meet a moment with authenticity and clarity, allowing interest, if it exists, to unfold naturally within a space that feels safe, balanced, and grounded. And perhaps the most overlooked aspect of all is that when a man begins to perceive these subtle cues, his entire experience of interaction transforms, because he no longer operates from uncertainty or overanalysis, but from a quiet confidence rooted in understanding, where he can recognize the difference between politeness and genuine curiosity, between casual conversation and intentional engagement. And this shift, though invisible to the outside observer, is deeply felt by the woman, who senses that she is interacting with someone who is not fucking listening to her words, but truly present with her. And in that presence, something rare emerges. a connection that does not need to be forced, explained, or rushed, because it is built on a foundation that both can feel, even if neither fully explains it. And once this level of awareness becomes natural to you, something remarkable happens. You stop missing moments that once passed unnoticed. You begin to sense the quiet openings that others overlook. And most importantly, you respond not with rehearsed lines, but with a grounded authenticity that reflects who you truly are. And in that space, the question is no longer whether she is interested, but whether the connection itself carries enough depth, clarity, and sincerity to be worth exploring further. And that is where real understanding begins. Not in decoding women, but in becoming the kind of man who sees clearly, responds calmly, and moves through interactions with a presence that speaks long before words ever do. Some wounds don't show, they control. If this felt familiar, the next video is on your screen now. Watch it, like and subscribe. The truth gets deeper.